next generation, which was the Delo 400 LE. So what I'm going to do now is talk through a little bit about Delo 400 and also give you kind of a glimpse of our Delo Gold Ultra. So today we have in the marketplace Delo 400, and then our next tier down is Delo Gold, which is an API CH4. So we're going to be actually upgrading Delo Gold to Delo Gold Ultra. It's an API CI4 product. It's a good product. It's not the same as Delo 400, but for those customers who are really not interested in really, extending out the drains that far or getting into, or not willing to pay the price, let's say, of a Delo 400, Delo Gold Ultra is a good option for folks when especially for folks going from Delo Gold to Delo Gold Ultra. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So again, in API categories, this is kind of how the categories are developed and how they've come over time. So they started all the way back from the 80s with CE, API CE, went to CF4. You can see also on the chart there at the top over here, we've also defined fuel sulfur level here. Okay, so on the background here, and then what these blue parts right here are, this is particulates and NOx. Okay, so particulates meaning the black stuff you see coming out of the smokestack, and then NOx is nitrous oxide from the combustion process. So from an emission standpoint, when you hear about the OEMs talking about reducing emissions and stuff, what they're concerned about is they're concerned about reducing these blue boxes. So they're concerned about reducing particulates this way, NOx this way. And so as you can see, as time has gone on, as you've gone through the different categories, particulates and NOx have been an issue of trying to get those out of the smokestacks that come out, the exhaust that comes out of those diesel smokestacks. A lot of this was, as you've gone from high sulfur to kind of a mid-range fuel sulfur, and now you're going to ultra-low sulfur diesel, there's a lot of things that have helped reduce some of those particulates and those NOx, but you've also had to they've had to redesign the engines, the timing, and also they're putting a lot more stress on the engines, which puts a lot more stress on the engine oil. So as these categories have evolved, you're seeing significantly more tests having to be run, engine tests for getting qualifications, and so it's getting more and more expensive. So if I tracked how, the cost of oil from here all the way down to here, you've probably seen, significant cost movement also, and part of that is just because the formulations have changed so much, the amount of testing has changed quite a bit. So that's kind of where we're at. What I was going to talk about today, if we go on, so if you see I crossed out the categories there. So what those mean is those categories are no longer supported. So if you see an API, somebody claiming, well, I've got a CF4 oil, there's no backing to it. So anybody can claim a CF4 oil. So if you wanted to go home today and blend up an oil in your backyard, you could call it CF4. Okay, all you got to do is buy an ad pack that says that, and that's it. But it's no longer supported from the API. The lowest quality supported today by the API is CH4, which our Delo Gold is today. We're going to be introducing CI4, which is Delo Gold Ultra, and then Delo 400 multi-grade is CI4+. Once you guys look to move, or if the market at some point in the future moves to ultra-low sulfur diesel, which will be 50 parts per million or lower, you'll start to hear about low SAPS oils, okay? Low sulfur, sulfated ash, and phosphorus oils. And so those oils will be the next ones that will be coming. Our product in that category is called Delo 400 LE. But these are all the different engine tests you have to run to get a CJ4 product approved. Okay, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14 engine tests you've got to run. Okay, so we're talking every time you run these tests, it's about $1.5 million to $2 million just to run a formulation. Then on top of that, they have what's called a chemical box. The chemical box in this means they say you can't have more than 1% sulfated ash in the oil. You can't have, you've got to have a certain amount of phosphorus because you can't poison any catalyst systems or the DPF systems out there. So there's a number of things within the chemical box you can and can't do, and they define that. Whereas in other categories, so if I go to CI4+, there is no chemical box. Okay. So basically, they're putting the box around it that allows you to do that. And within that, we have several products. We have Delo 400 LE. We have a Delo 400 LE synthetic blend, which is a 10W30 product. So one of the other things that we're seeing is, if you haven't heard this, there's more and more push, specifically in the mature markets, Europe, North America, for lighter viscosity engine oils. Why? Because they're very concerned about fuel economy. So as I talked to you about previously, all the categories up until CJ4 had been really focused around emissions reductions. Well, once they hit CJ4, they've done everything they can on emissions reductions with the actual oil. The next step for them is, the only other way you can reduce emissions is through fuel economy. So it's basically burning less fuel, less carbon through the smokestack. And so that is really the next step of where you see the future going. So we have a full line of products already available. So at some point, if this market moves, you start to get newer trucks, newer vehicles. Chevron already has a full line of products that are available to you in that category.